For 4 years, the Civil War raged around the nation's capital. It was America's bloodiest conflict, inflicting over 1 million casualties, killing over 600,000. Battles were waged over 26 states, as far west as Idaho and New Mexico. There were 11 Confederate states led by General Robert E. Lee, and 25 Union states led by Ulysses S. Grant. The Mason-Dixon line divided the two warring sides. For both the Union and Confederacy, West Virginia was key. During the Civil War, it was officially a Union state and was heavily patrolled by Union troops. But the Confederates had an important advantage here: the underground.
The federal government in D.C. has spent billions of dollars developing surefire, state-of-the-art security measures to safeguard against catastrophes. But even the biggest man-made engineering projects can't match the natural defenses of Mother Nature. So when America's most notorious general needed a foolproof bunker to protect his troops during our bloodiest war, he found it in a deep, dark cave, one that reaches over 70 miles inside a mountain. And they made camp there with the enemy troops right over their heads.
Organ Cave, West Virginia is a tiny community, but the cave it's named after played a huge role in America's history.
I'm here to meet Janie Morgan. She's a local expert on this cave. She knows everything about its incredible history and its awesome geology, and she's taken me inside. Janie.
Hi.
How you doing, Don? How are you?
I'm fine. Ready to go caving?
So how deep is this cave?
486 feet deep, but 300 feet beyond that of water.
Really?
The cave is about 45 miles plus. We have 200 passages that has never been mapped or surveyed yet.
Let's get down.
Look up here on top of this ridge.
Yeah.
The Northerners, the Yankees, camped up there during the Civil War and didn't even know the Confederates was in the cave.
Okay, a whole Yankee camp up there.
Yeah. Now, when we go down in, the cave will be 150 feet down under to start with.
All right. It's gigantic. If I was to enter this cave, as we did here, and walk to the end of what is known, how long would that take me?
It would take you forever because it's like a catacombs. It's like a spider web.
And this room, I mean, we're not but 200 feet from the entrance here. This is the biggest entrance I've ever seen as far as a room goes.
The Confederate soldiers come in under General Robert E. Lee and held church services in here.
Wow.
And it housed 1,100 Confederate soldiers.
No kidding.
In 1861, West Virginia was a Union state, but many of the backcountry folks here supported the Confederacy. The leader of the Southern Army, Robert E. Lee, knew that, and he also knew about the cave. In the 1830s, a young Robert E. Lee came to Organ Cave as a visitor. Little did he know the role both he and the cave would play in our nation's greatest conflict.
This is what Robert E. Lee seen when he come here during the stagecoach tours between 1822 to 1836.
I see. So he came here long before the Civil War.
Yes.
A lifelong military man, General Lee noticed something else in the cave. Besides geological wonders, the cave is a natural source for a key ingredient in gunpowder.
Look at this rock here.
Mm-hmm.
See the glittery stuff on it that looks like sparkles,
Oh,
like
yeah.
yeah. That's saltpeter.
So they actually mined the saltpeter in these caves in order to make gunpowder.
Yes. This particular cave furnished 75% of the saltpeter for the Confederate Army.
Really?
This cave is also known as Lee's, General Robert E. Lee's, underground ammo factory.
Gunpowder has been made the same way since 900 AD in China. It's a mix of charcoal, sulfur, and saltpeter, also called potassium nitrate. Saltpeter is formed when limestone is exposed to rotting manure, like bat guano.
We won't disturb him.
Thousands of bats created a natural supply of saltpeter, but extracting it from the dirt and processing it was tough work, especially 150 feet underground.
So they're mining the saltpeter up there, but they're carrying it down there?
They're carrying it back a half a mile into the cave.
With Union soldiers camped just overhead, the Confederates had to take extra precaution operating in their underground weapons factory. Organ Cave runs 70 miles inside the mountain with countless chambers and passageways. The Confederate soldiers mined the saltpeter near the mouth of the cave, then walked a treacherous path half a mile along ledges and cliffs to the hopper room, where the saltpeter was processed and eventually turned into gunpowder.
This is a ledge that the soldiers walked on to get to and from the hopper room, and they was carrying on their back about 150-pound bag of cave dirt in a gunny sack.
So they weren't walking where we are. They were walking up here.
Yeah.
Here.
Yes.
On this ledge up here.
Right.
And so they were carrying a sack of dirt. What else?
Pitch pine torch.
A torch, okay.
And their muzzleloader.
All right. So they're carrying the gun, their torch, and their gunny sack.
Do you see here the markings on the walls?
Oh, yeah.
These are to be tally marks from the Confederate soldiers.
Okay, so they're keeping track of the raw materials and the solution that's made.
By the spring of 1861, Northern blockades had strangled Southern supply lines. They were short on everything except gunpowder, and this cave was the reason why. Secrecy was a matter of life and death. The Confederates made sure their gunpowder factory couldn't be detected by Union troops camped overhead. They also had a sentry post just above the hopper room.
Now, right up here is where the sentry would have been. And from this point there, he could see all the way back down the aisle where we just bumped into hoppers.
Really? This is like frozen in time here.
The technology was simple. Wooden V-shaped hoppers were lined with straw, then filled with dirt. Water was poured over the top, and as it filtered through, it leached the saltpeter out. The mineral-rich solution ran out through a wooden spout into a catch trough. The process was repeated again and again until the final solution was thick enough to float an egg in. After the solution was made, the catch troughs were carried a half-mile back to the chapel room, where the saltpeter brew was boiled down into crystals.
I mean, this really brings home how difficult it was to wage war, to make the gunpowder.
Yes, to see what the men actually went through. I mean, you can see photographs and you can visualize, but until you get into a situation like this and actually feel it, you don't quite understand what they went through.
In November of 1863, the soldiers who manned this factory left their post to fight in the Battle of Droop Mountain. Routed by Union forces, the South suffered nearly 300 casualties that day. They never returned to Organ Cave. West Virginia remained in Northern hands for the rest of the war, but the top-secret Confederate weapons factory was never discovered. After 4 years of a war that ripped apart the nation, a unified America finally began to rebuild, growing into the wealthiest and most powerful nation in the world.